The apartment smelled like old soup and cat piss and something sharp underneath it. The super shoved a key at me and said the tenant skipped. He wanted the place clear by noon. I'd done trash outs before, the kind where you don't think, you just move. I was tired, underpaid, and already pissed at the deadline, so I didn't argue. I slipped on gloves, kicked the door until the lock gave, and the place breathed out on me like a mouth. Bowls crusted on the counter, grocery bags melted into the sink, a ring of dried broth on the stove like somebody quit halfway through living. The blinds hung crooked. The bathroom window sat cracked, open a finger width. I shoved it shut and still checked it twice because the air in there felt watched. I wore gloves. I opened windows. I hauled trash bags until my arms shook. I didn't search. I just worked. The super came back once and barked about the time. I told him to stop breathing down my fucking neck. He called me ungrateful, then left like he'd done me a favor handing me a key to a landfill. I locked the door behind him. In the bedroom closet, I shoved aside a stack of flattened boxes and my glove caught on metal. Fresh screws, clean heads, 4 of them, evenly spaced, holding a plywood panel over drywall that didn't match the rest of the place. It wasn't part of the building. It wasn't old. It looked maintained like somebody cared. That should have been enough to make me back off, but being tired makes you stupid. I grabbed a screwdriver from my bag and went at it. Each screw came out too easily, like they'd been turned a lot. The panel dropped into my hands, and a cold pocket of air pushed out against my face. Not musty, not moldy, cold and clean like a fridge. Behind it was a hole punched into the wall, tight and dark, lined with plastic like somebody tried to keep it dry. The opening pointed straight into the crawl space between units. I shoved my phone light in. I saw a milk crate full of hair ties, cheap earrings, a single sneaker, and a stack of IDs. Not one, a pile. Faces, names, different ages. My throat closed. I didn't do the horror movie thing where you lean closer and learn a lesson. I backed out so fast I scraped my knuckles on the drywall. I slapped the panel back up like I could erase what I'd seen, then froze with my ear to it, listening for movement on the other side. The building creaked. Pipes ticked. A TV murmured somewhere. Every normal sound felt like a cover. My brain tried to bargain. Maybe the tenant found lost wallets. Maybe it's a scam. Maybe it's nothing. Then I saw in my own photo preview the corner of one ID with a lanyard hole punched through it, the way bouncers do. Someone had taken the time to keep them. Someone had taken the time to hide them. I didn't have the nerve to rip the wall wide open. I did the coward thing. I wedged the panel back so it looked untouched. Then I slid my phone into the crack and took pictures until the autofocus finally caught. My hand shook so bad it was fucking embarrassing, I almost dropped the phone into the hole. I pulled it out and my screen was smeared with dust and plastic grit. I wiped it on my jeans like that mattered. I went into the hall and knocked on the neighbor's door because the crawl space ran that way. I didn't say hello. I asked if anyone had been in her apartment. She blinked like I'd slapped her with it. She kept the chain on, eyeing my gloves, my trash bags, my sweat like I was the problem. She said no, nobody. Then she started listing little things fast, like they'd been sitting in her mouth for weeks. Tapping sounds at night, she blamed on pipes. Her bathroom window found unlocked twice. The vent cover in her shower that kept loosening even after she tightened it. She tried to laugh it off at the end, like old buildings, right? But her eyes went wet, and she hated herself for it. I told her I found something in the wall, and she needed to get out. Right now. She snapped back that she wasn't leaving because some random guy with gloves had a feeling like I was selling her a scam. She started to shut the door. I caught it with my boot, stupid, I know, and shoved my phone up so she could see the photo. Her face dropped. The chain rattled. She opened the door fully and started cussing at me like that could keep her from shaking. I told her to grab her keys, her wallet, nothing else. She argued anyway, kept asking what the hell it was, who would do that, why me, why this building. I didn't have answers. I only had adrenaline and a bad sense of math that said if someone can move through walls, we're already late. She tried to go back for her laptop. I grabbed her elbow and dragged her toward the stairwell. She swore at me. Then she saw my face and stopped fighting. We went downstairs, and I called the cops with my phone held like it might explode. The dispatcher kept asking, "Is anyone hurt?" And I kept saying, "Not yet," which sounded insane even to me. While we waited in the lobby, a man came out of the empty unit. Not the skip tenant. Someone else. He carried a toolbox like he belonged there. He looked at me, then at the neighbor, then he smiled like we were all just neighbors. Normal guy. Normal posture. No ruse. Clean boots. The kind of face you forget 5 seconds after you see it. And that's the whole point. Marissa, she finally said her name when the dispatcher asked, went dead still beside me. I felt her whole body lock. The man's eyes flicked to my phone. The smile didn't change. I opened my mouth to yell at him, and nothing came out. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. He didn't run. He walked away. Slow. Confident. Like he knew the building better than the super. He pushed out the front door, crossed the sidewalk, and turned the corner like he was going to grab lunch. His toolbox clicked softly with each step. That sound made me nauseous. It sounded like keys and screws in time. The cops showed up 2 minutes later, which felt both fast and not fast enough. At first, they treated it like a weird landlord beef. One of them asked if I was sure the panel wasn't just part construction. I made him look at my photos. His eyes changed. He called it in, suddenly polite. They went up, they pulled the panel, and the whole hallway filled with that cold, clean air. One cop swore under his breath. Another told us to stay downstairs and keep the lobby door locked. Like that would stop someone who already lived in the walls. It took them a while to find the other entrance. They had to pull a vent and shove a flashlight in and crawl like they were hunting a rat. They found the milk crate. They found the IDs. They found a cheap camera taped to a vent, angled at Marissa's shower. They found a notebook with dates and little notes about routines. No monsters, just a man with time and access and a calm face. They brought some of it down in clear bags so we could confirm what belonged to who. Marissa saw a scrunchie that matched the one on her wrist, and she ripped it off like it bit her. One officer tried to calm her down and asked if she'd ever given anyone a spare. She almost screamed. I wanted to scream too, because the whole point was you shouldn't have to hand a stranger a key for them to get in. I kept thinking about the super's master keys, about how many hands those keys pass through when rent's late and maintenance is cheap. The detective who showed up later held a notebook like it burned. He read a few lines, then shut it hard, like slamming a door. The super arrived halfway through and started yelling about liability until the detective looked at him and said flat, "Do you want your tenants on the news?" The super went quiet real fast. They took my statement. They took Marissa's. They took my phone for the pictures and told me they'd get them back to me. Like my pictures were a stolen bike. An officer walked me back up so I could lock the unit I'd been cleaning. On the way, I stared at every baseboard, every closet, every vent, imagining fingers, eyes, a phone, camera lens, all of it right on the other side of drywall. The empty unit was cleaner than the one I'd been in. Too clean. Boardrooms. No trash. No stink. Just scuff marks near the closet and a strip of plastic tucked behind a pipe like it had been handled recently. It made my stomach roll again because it meant somebody had been careful. Somebody had been practicing. After they finally let us leave, Marissa stood on the sidewalk hugging her own arms, staring at her windows like they were strangers. I offered her a ride anywhere. She refused and just kept saying she needed to call her sister, her dad, anyone. I watched her walk away, and I hated that the best I could do for her was get outside. I drove home with my windows down, even though it was cold, because the smell of that apartment clung to me and I couldn't stand it inside my car. I scrubbed my hands raw on my sink and still felt that cold air on my wrists. For weeks after, every time I heard pipes tick, my skin crawled. I kept seeing that smile, like he wasn't caught doing evil, like he was caught getting interrupted. The bus doors hissed, and I stepped off thinking I'd beat the rain. The guy behind me stepped off too, even though he'd sat with his head down the whole ride. I crossed the street. He crossed. I slowed. He slowed. I cut left toward a laundromat because it had lights and cameras. He didn't peel off. He moved closer, fast enough that I felt heat from him. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. Blue coat. Hair tie on wrist. My stomach flipped. That wasn't a lucky guess. That was somebody clocking me, close enough to know what I had on and what I did with my hands. I stared at my wrist like I'd never seen it before. I always keep a hair tie there. It's habit. It's nothing. And now it felt like a tag. On the bus, he'd been a shadow more than a person. Hood up, chin down, hands tucked like he was asleep or ashamed. But every time the bus slowed for a stop, his body tightened like he was counting blocks without looking. When I stood to get off, he stood too. Right behind me, no hesitation, no wait for the aisle, just straight up like a switch got flipped. I could feel him close enough to brush my bag. And I remember thinking for one stupid second, don't be rude, don't assume like politeness is something you can spend to buy safety. I checked the number. No name, no area code I recognized. Just digits like a burner. My thumb hovered over call, and I didn't because if I called and it rang in his pocket behind me, that would be the moment it turned into a sprint. My hand went cold anyway. I jammed my fist in my pocket and wrapped my fingers around my keys until the teeth bit my skin. I didn't look back again. Looking back is how you start negotiating with yourself. Looking back is how you hand someone your fear on a plate. I walked straight into the laundromat and kept moving like I had a plan. He followed me inside. No hositashchen. He stopped near the change machine and stared like he owned the air. The door chime pinged, and then the place swallowed us in warm, damp noise. Washers sloshing, dryers thumping, a TV in the corner playing something nobody watched, coins clinking. A kid was glued to a tablet. Two people sat on plastic chairs with dead eyes. A woman shoved wet sheets into a dryer like she hated them. Nobody looked up until I forced them to. I grabbed a detergent bottle off the shelf, big, heavy, and walked to the back where the employee sat behind a scratch counter with cloudy plexiglass. I didn't ask nicely. I told him to call 911. I kept my eyes on the guy the whole time, because the second you look away, they move. The employee blinked at me like I was trying to start trouble on purpose. He glanced past me, saw the predator, then looked away like if he didn't lock eyes with the problem, it wouldn't be real. He started to stall, shifting in his chair, asking what I wanted him to do, talking in circles. I could feel the room reading me as drama instead of danger. A man near the dryers muttered something about couples fighting. The woman with the sheets rolled her eyes. That made me want to scream. I wasn't his girlfriend. I wasn't his friend. I was just the person he picked. The predator stepped toward the door like he might leave, then pivoted and came back in. He didn't have to touch me to threaten me. He just changed the distance. He also angled his body so he was closer to the exit than I was, like he wanted to make sure I didn't slip past him. He wanted me to step outside. He wanted the employee to stay passive. He wanted me alone. I leaned over the counter and told the employee, through clenched teeth, that if he didn't call right now, I would start smashing machines. He finally grabbed the phone, still slow, still annoyed, like I was making his night hard. My hands shook around the detergent bottle. I could hear my own blood in my ears. I could feel the predator's eyes on my back like pressure. I moved first. I swung the detergent bottle into the rack of shopping carts by the front and made a loud metal crash. The carts clattered like a drumline. Everybody turned. The kids started crying. The woman with the sheets froze mid-step. Someone swore. A guy lifted his phone like he was filming a fight. The employee finally dialed, voice jumping up into fake authority because now other people were watching him not be useless. The guy's face tightened like I'd ruined his game. He rushed me anyway. Not grab, not a punch. He tried to hook my elbow and steer me, like practice, like he knew exactly how to fold a person's balance and walk them where he wanted. His fingers locked above my wrist, and he pulled, and it felt less like an attack and more like being handled. That's what made my brain go white. It wasn't rage. It was routine. I fought ugly. I slammed my heel into his shin. The impact jarred up my leg, but I didn't care. I shoved my shoulder into his chest and drove forward, hard, like I was trying to knock him through the washers. I screamed with my whole body, not words, just noise. People flinched. Nobody grabbed him. Nobody grabbed me. They watched from a safe distance like witnesses don't have hands. He hissed, "Shut up," and tried to clamp a hand over my mouth. His palm at my face, and the smell hit me too. Stale cigarettes and something sour like pennies. I bit. Hard. I didn't nip him. I tried to take a piece. I tasted blood and spit and that coin sour tang, and the pressure of his hand changed instantly from control to panic. He yanked back and his hand came away slick. I swung the detergent bottle again, desperate and sloppy, and it thudded into his shoulder. He stumbled into a washer and the lid rattled. For a split second, I thought he'd snap and hit me just for fighting back. Instead, he scanned the room. Phone's up now, the employee talking to 911, heads turned, and he made the decision that kept him out of cuffs tonight. He let go and bolted. I ran outside after him because adrenaline makes you stupid. I hit the rain like a wall. The cold slapped my cheeks, the street lights smeared on the wet pavement, and my shoes slid on the slick curb. I watched him disappear between two parked cars like he'd done it 1,000 times. I started after him, 2 steps, 3. Then I stopped because the gap between those cars felt like a throat, and I wasn't going to crawl into it. My chest burned. My hand shook around my keys. My jaw ached from biting down. That's when I noticed the second man by the bus stop, standing too still, watching too hard. He wasn't shocked. He wasn't confused. He wasn't even interested in the laundromat chaos. He was watching me watch the alley, like he was measuring what I do next. When I stared back, he didn't flinch. He didn't pretend to check his phone. He held my gaze for a beat, then turned and walked away slow, like he'd done nothing all night. Behind me, the employee yelled for me to get back inside like I was the liability. I snapped at him that he almost didn't call. He tried to argue, defensive, saying he didn't know what was happening, saying he didn't want trouble. I told him trouble already had its hand on my face. A couple customers muttered that I should calm down. One guy said I was making it worse, like noise is what creates violence. I told him to shut up and watch the door, and he looked away, embarrassed, pretending his hand were tied. The cops came fast after that, 2 cars, lights washing the wet street red and blue. They took my statement under the awning while the laundromat kept thumping behind us like nothing happened. They asked what he looked like, and my brain kept handing me useless pieces, his grip, his smell, the way he moved like it was work, while his face slid around in my memory like soap. I showed them the text message. One of them looked from the screen to my wrist, then back again, and his mouth tightened like he finally understood why I couldn't just ignore it. They asked if I knew him, if I'd been followed before, if I'd posted my location, if I'd been drinking, all the usual sideways questions that make you feel like you're on trial for having a body outside at night. The employee started talking about his cameras, and I watched one cop look up at the dome in the corner and then look away like he already knew it didn't matter. I could practically hear the future excuse. Not recording, bad angle, too dark, too late. They drove around for a few minutes, came back empty, and told me to go home and stay alert. Like alert was the missing ingredient. Like I hadn't been alert enough to stop a stranger from listing my clothes and my hair tie like evidence. When they left, the street went quiet again, and that quiet felt like a trap. I walked home anyway, keys digging into my fingers, checking every reflection in every window, listening for footsteps that matched mine. I kept looking at my wrist, at the hair tie. It wasn't fashion anymore. It was proof somebody watched me enough to inventory me. The first thing that showed up was a box of condoms on my porch. I don't use condoms. The shipping label had my full name and my work address printed under it like a joke. Not just my street, my job. Like they wanted me to picture my boss holding it, raising an eyebrow, deciding who I was without even asking. I stood there with my keys half in the lock, staring at the label until my hand cramped. I brought it inside with 2 fingers like it was contaminated and checked everything, email, bank, cards, every dumb app that's ever had my address. Nothing. No order confirmation. No charge. Nopes. just a package that knew me. I threw it in my kitchen trash, then immediately hated myself because now it was in my home, like I'd helped them cross the line. I took it back out, shoved it into the dumpster outside, and washed my hands way too long like soap could fix the feeling. Then came the pizzas. 2 nights later, 2 boxes paid for dropped at my door. The guy knocked hard, impatient. I opened the door a crack and saw him holding dinner I never asked for. I told him I didn't order shit. He turned his phone around and my name was right there. My unit. He tried to hand me the boxes anyway because he didn't want to drag them back. I told him no. He got pissed and said it was paid and I was wasting his time. I shut the door and locked it, and I could hear him muttering down the stairs loud enough for neighbors to hear, like he wanted them to think I was the asshole. After that, it turned into a routine. Taxis idling outside my building, horn tapping, drivers craning their necks up at my windows. One came into the lobby and hammered my buzzer until the whole panel lit up. I didn't answer. I watched through the peephole while he stood there looking around like I was supposed to appear and climb into his car. The super caught me coming in one night and asked if I was calling rides all the time because it was creating problems. I snapped that I wasn't ordering anything. He snapped back that it was still my unit getting hit, and he didn't want complaints. I ended up arguing in the hallway like I was the problem, like I was the one doing it. Then the call started. Late. Always after midnight. Block number, unknown number, sometimes my own area code. I'd answer and get nothing but breathing, wet and close, and this tiny click like they were muting and unmuting. First time I said hello. Second time I said, "Who the fuck is this?" Third time I didn't speak at all, just listened. The breathing kept going. The click kept happening. Then they'd hang up. They left voicemails too. 10 seconds of breathing, and that click, like they wanted proof they could reach me whenever they felt like it. I scrubbed my accounts, changed usernames, deleted old photos. It didn't stop. Whoever had my info already had it. They weren't finding me anymore. They were playing with me. I changed passwords until I couldn't remember them. I turned everything private. I deleted old profiles I hadn't touched in years. I called delivery apps and got the same blank, cheerful bullshit. They couldn't give me information about the account because of privacy. I said, "My privacy is already gone. Someone is using your platform to harass me." They apologized like they were reading a script and told me to report it in the app, like I had the app, like I was the customer. I tried blocking numbers. They switched numbers. I muted unknown callers. They started calling my work line. I changed my number once, paid extra for it, and it took them 2 days to hit it again. That's when I stopped pretending this was random. One afternoon, my boss called me in. No small talk. He slid a printed email across his desk like evidence. Someone had sent him a tip about me. Screenshots, crop out of context. Old messages yanked up and clipped tight so they looked worse than they were. Somebody circled stuff in red like they were grading my character. The goal wasn't truth. The goal was damage. My boss asked if I had anything to share. Calm voice, manager face, like I was already a risk he needed to manage. I told him I was being harassed. I told him about the deliveries, the taxis, the breathing calls. He nodded, but his eyes kept dropping back to the printout. Then he said it. If this came to the office, it became a workplace issue. Not my safety issue. A workplace issue. HR emailed me an hour later asking for documentation and context, and every question felt like a way to turn it into my fault for having existed online at all. People started looking at me different. One coworker asked if I was okay, in that careful voice people use when they've already decided you're messy. I left work shaking, furious, and drove straight home because I needed my own walls around me, even though I didn't trust them anymore. On the way up the stairs, I kept gripping my keys so hard my knuckles hurt. My doormat was flipped over. The welcome sign faced the wall like somebody didn't want it watching. I stopped dead. It's a tiny thing, stupid on paper, but it hit like a punch because it felt deliberate. Like a person's hand had been there, taking time, doing it just to let me know they could. Inside, the apartment felt wrong. Not haunted, used. My kitchen chair sat 2 inches off its usual spot. My freezer was open a crack. I stared at it. Then I saw it. A smear on the handle, greasy like someone ate something in my kitchen and didn't bother to wipe. My throat went tight. I checked the hook by the door where my spare key always hung. The hook was empty. That's when my brain finally stopped trying to make excuses. I grabbed a pan because it was there, heavy dumb. I checked the bedroom. Clochette door open. Not wide, just enough. I didn't say hello. I didn't call out. I backed away because I didn't want to get trapped in there. Then a phone vibrated under my couch. Not mine. I froze. The buzzing stopped, then started again like another call came through. My eyes locked on the couch like it was breathing. I didn't bend down. I kicked the couch back with my foot. A man rolled out from behind it like he'd been folded there. He didn't pop up screaming. He rose slow, hands out like I was the unreasonable one. He smelled like sweat and stale cologne. He grinned and said one word, relax. That grin lit a fuse in me. I swung the pan. I hit his forearm. Bone thunked. He cursed, lunged, grabbed for my wrist. His grip burned. He tried to twist my arm like he knew exactly what he was doing. I drove my knee into his thigh and tore free. I ran for the door. He slammed it shut with his body before I could open it. He wanted the room. He wanted control. He started talking fast, threats mixed with pity, like he'd practiced getting women to doubt themselves, like he expected me to stop and listen and explain and bargain for my own safety. I didn't argue. I jammed my fingers into his face and raked down. I felt skin give. He screamed. That scream gave me space. I bolted to the balcony, shoved the sliding door open, climbed the railing, and dropped to the neighbor's patio hard enough to bruise my ribs and knock the air out of me. I landed ugly. Pain flashed up my side. I still got up because stopping felt like dying. I banged on the neighbor's glass until they opened. I shoved inside and locked the door. My hand shook so hard I hit the wrong buttons dialing 911 and had to do it again. I kept staring at the balcony rail like he'd appear above it and just smile. When the cops searched my place, they found the burner phone under my couch. They found my spare key missing from the hook by the door. They found nothing stolen because theft wasn't the point. One cop asked if I was sure about the key, like maybe I misplaced it. Another asked if I had an ex who might do this. Like strangers don't exist. Like I needed to supply a neat story with a name to make it real. The point was that he sat in my home, waiting, confident enough to bring a phone and make himself comfortable. And the last message on my actual phone, sent while I was at work, made my stomach twist. You should really lock your door, bitch.